Acciona Energía is the part of the company that takes care of energy, as its name says. And we are actually the largest renewable operator, 100% renewable operator in the world. Our business consists on taking care of the whole value chain. This means that we develop our projects, we make the engineering and the construction of our projects, and we own and operate all of our projects, sometimes with partners, sometimes all by ourselves. We have presence all around the world in 16 countries right now. We have 9 gigawatts that are operational, and we are building 1 more gigawatt this year, which is actually a landmark for the company because it's 1,000 megawatts being built at the same time all over the world, different technologies. So India has actually always been considered as one of our key countries. We are present for many years in the country. We were actually the first Spanish company to deploy renewable projects there. And we have 4 operational projects in Karnataka. They're onshore wind, all of them, and they account for about 170 megawatts of power. The last entered operation last year, actually, and it was quite a challenge to deploy them. It was very challenging, the development process in India. Regulation was sometimes unclear. All the issues involving land ownership were especially complicated. But at the end, we are happy to have overcome all of that, and the projects are operational. They're going well. We also have other projects in development. So we have a good portfolio of both photovoltaic and wind projects in India, which we are hoping to deploy if we find the right occasion in which the client provides comfort enough for our investors to go for those projects. At the same time, it's important for you to know that in Acciona, we also have experience with the manufacturing of turbines. We used to own a company called Acciona Wind Power, which was sold 2 years ago to Nordex, which is a big German manufacturer of wind turbines. But we still keep a 30% stake on that company. And actually, Nordex is producing in India. So for us, we see India as a very interesting country, both for the development part of the renewable energy, but also as a key member in the industry as a manufacturer of wind turbines. In the last years, what we have seen is a different way, a slight change in the way we originate renewable power. So before, origination used to be in the projects, in the project development. If you had a good project, you were just waiting enough to find a feed-in tariff or a tender opportunity to go and try to get awarded there, which is good and we keep on doing. But at the same time, there's something fascinating happening in the industry, which is because renewables are getting so competitive, because the prices are so low, for the first time, we are fully competitive with conventional power. And this means that corporations that, of course, have a great interest in clean business, but at the same time also needs to guarantee that the electricity prices that they are receiving are competitive, these companies are starting to have a very, very big interest in renewable energy generation. They see it as a solution to satisfy their customers in terms of being able to say, yes, we are trying our best to save the planet, to stop climate change, and at the same time, it's not a problem for them because the prices are very competitive. So the origination of renewable power is going more and more towards clients. And this is something that we are seeing all around the world. For example, in the specific case of Acciona, we have a lot of this kind of corporate PPA contracts in Chile. We are working on it as well in Mexico. But we are also working on it in India. Why do we think that India is an interesting country for this? The many reasons. On the one hand, India has good renewable resources and they're distributed in the whole territory, so there are good opportunities for generating renewables across the whole territory. But also, sometimes the deployment of renewables, although it's something that regulators wish and they are having amazing goals towards the future to turn their generation into renewable, Sometimes at a state level, it gets a little bit more complicated. It gets a little bit tricky with the regional utilities. And there's also something else, which is sometimes the T&D system, it's an issue in India. Sometimes the losses are huge, and that's something that is not beneficial for the system, for the clients, or for the generation, or for the generators at all. So what we see in India is the possibility to go directly to clients who have enough consumption for a contract to be good enough to be bankable. Also, companies that need to have the guarantee that they're a good off-taker, and we can discuss later on how that can happen. And we are seeing that those kind of customers can be a good way to promote renewables, and they can promote them in two different ways. You have the corporate PPAs that we've been talking about, so we can build a utility scale power plant somewhere in India, hopefully close to these clients, and we can sell the energy produced in that power plant directly to those corporate clients. But something else that we can do is we can use the fact that renewables have become cheaper and cheaper, specifically photovoltaics. Storage is also becoming cheaper and cheaper, and we can provide them with on-site solutions. Those solutions that we offer in Acciona, they're called microgrids, which is our way to transmit that our microgrids are trying to be as clean as possible. And basically, those are on-site generation solutions for our customers. Depending on how are the needs of the customer, because some customers need a constant load 24/7, some customers only need load during the day but not at night. So really depending on what are their needs, you can design different kind of microgrids that cover either 100% of their needs, that's one solution, or even more interesting, you can design microgrids that cover part of their needs, and then the rest of it comes from a corporate PPA. Why is this more interesting? Because on the one hand, you have on-site generation, so you can guarantee that there's always going to be generation there, even if there is a problem with the T&D system. But on the other hand, your backup is coming from this utility scale, so it's renewable and it's cheaper, because never forget that bigger plants are cheaper than smaller plants. That's for everything in life. So this combination of corporate PPA and microgrid can be extremely interesting for corporate clients in India. Microgrids are a great solution because they provide an answer to three different questions from corporations, which is, how can we have competitive power? How can we have cheap electricity? How can we have green, clean electricity? So how can we help the world with its issues about climate change? But also, how can we be sure that we are going to have electricity whenever we need it? Microgrids provide solution to these three different questions. So depending on what is more important or what is more problematic for each corporation in each site, you have a different kind of solution. And this is important to understand because microgrids can be both on or offline. What are we seeing around the world? We are seeing, for example, a big demand for on-grid microgrids in the States. Why? Because there are certain assets in the States which by law need to be able to have 24/7 supply always, or because out of comfortability for neighbors, for example, they want to make sure that they're going to have 24/7 energy no matter what. So imagine New York, you're living in a, I don't know what high floor of a building, and you want to make sure that the lift is going to be operating always. You don't want to go upstairs that. So that is one case of microgrid. That is an microgrid that focuses in having 24/7, and you provide clean power, and you're on-grid, but you can always go off-grid if needed. There's something which is completely different, which is the model, for example, in Australia. In Australia, we are seeing a lot of demand for microgrids in isolated regions, in isolated geographies. So, for example, let's say we have a mining company opening business in the middle of Australia where you have no electricity grid, where everything is far because Australia is enormous. So there's a very good chance for an microgrid there because you have to compete with electricity generation from diesel, and actually diesel is very expensive to get there. So when you're using an microgrid, for the first time you're able to produce 24/7, but also clean and also cheap. And even if you're not able to do 100% renewable, which is sometimes not the most competitive case because storage still needs to lower cost. I'm sure in some years it's going to be fully competitive when you're off-grid and you're 100% renewable. But even so, today you're not able to be 100%. You can be a very, very high percentage, let's say 60, 70% renewable, and you're already reducing the pollution so much. So you're reducing the price and you're reducing the pollution. Those are two cases. There are many other cases. You can contemplate, for example, islands. Hawaii is investing in ecogrids a lot. Puerto Rico is investing in ecogrids. Easter Island, we created an ecogrid for Easter Island so that they can diminish their dependence on fossil coming by boat, which is expensive, it's unsecure. In Puerto Rico especially, this whole program started after the sad disasters they had in the last year. They decided they needed to have solutions that were going to be there even when nothing else could arrive. When you're having an ecogrid, you have the guarantee that you're going to be having production as long as you have the source or as long as the storage is operating. So this business model, as you see, is very broad. It can be everywhere. It varies quite a lot. You need a company with experience like we have, very broad, with many technologies, with experience in a lot of different situations of managing electricity demand so that you can give the right answer to every different situation that clients have. What is important for us? What do we need from clients to be able to develop these solutions for them? Well, of course, these plants have a cost, and many times it needs to be financed. So we need to make these projects bankable. And how do you do this? Well, first of all, you need to be able to guarantee to the bank that you're gonna receive money for the electricity that you're surrendering. So that means the quality of the off-taker is important. There are other tools that you can have as a regulator to make sure that if the client, if the off-taker is not contemplated as such in a normal way of speaking by banking institutions, you can somehow provide some guarantee so that you can go over that problem and you can make more of your companies in your area of influence be able to benefit from these kind of solutions. The second thing, which is very important, is besides the fact that you need to make sure that you're gonna receive payment for your electricity, you also need to make sure that this is gonna be enough time for the investment to return. Because obviously, if you're building a utility scale power plant and you're connected to the grid, you're selling electricity here or there, and if one client fails, there might be another client which is reachable. But when you're building an ecogrid, it's usually on site, it's on the client facility or very near, and usually it's the only potential client that you have. So if the client changes their mind in, let's say, a short period of time and the investment is still not returned, you're going to have a problem. And the bank knows that, and they will not finance any kind of contract, any kind of solution like this, which is not guaranteeing enough time to recover the investment.